This happened a week ago. I'm 32 and took the job as a security guard at the old hospital just to pay off my student loans. It wasn't supposed to be a big deal. The hospital loomed at the edge of town, looking more like a horror movie set than a place for healing. Flickering fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. I thought I could do it, handle the creepy vibe and enjoy the quiet. But everything changed. I settled in the security room with a cup of coffee. The first nights were standard. I walked the halls, checked the doors, and heard the soft hum of the building. On my third night, I noticed a rhythmic tapping coming from the second-floor pediatric wing. It didn't seem right. I thought maybe it was loose pipes or something, but I felt uneasy. As the week dragged on, the tapping got louder, almost like it was mocking me. Sometimes I heard a soft giggle echo through the empty halls. I walked up to the pediatric wing, my heart pounding. I peeked into the rooms. Nothing looked out of place, but it felt wrong. My gut instinct warned me. Every night felt longer. One shift, I caught a shadowy figure in a reflection on the window. I spun around, but nothing was there. I thought maybe I was just tired. I checked all the rooms, but they were empty. That cold feeling washed over me again, like something was watching. Then, one night, I found toys spread out in the hallway. They weren't just dropped, they were arranged in a circle. Who had been here? I stared at the dolls, their eyes wide open, their faces blank in the dim light. I picked them up, and chills ran through me once more. I was alone, or so I thought. On my last night, I finally went to the pediatric wing. The tapping was now deafening. My heart raced like I was sprinting. I opened the door to one of the rooms. It creaked loudly, echoing in the hallway. I stood there, frozen. "Is anyone here?" I asked. Only the tap, tap, tap replied. Then I saw her. A little girl in a pale hospital gown looked at me with wide eyes. I blinked and she vanished. I stumbled back, fear squeezing my chest. I couldn't breathe. I tried convincing myself it was just my mind playing tricks. Deep down, I knew something was very wrong. As I finally walked out for the last time, I could have sworn I heard laughter behind me. I turned around, but the hallway was empty. What really happened in that hospital? Why do I still feel like something is there, waiting? Some nights, I hear that tapping echo in my head. I don't think I'll ever forget what happened. The next night, I couldn't shake off the unease from my last shift. Even though I had quit, that hospital haunted me. I kept thinking about that little girl. Who was she? Was she trying to tell me something? My curiosity gnawed at me, and I found myself driving back to the place I had sworn to leave behind. The lights flickered as I parked. I hesitated, staring at the entrance. The thought of going inside sent a chill down my spine, but I had to know more. I pushed the door open, and it creaked like a warning. The air was stale, and the silence enveloped me heavily. I felt like an intruder. I made my way to the pediatric wing. Every step I took echoed down the deserted halls. I had my flashlight, but it felt weak against the darkness. As I approached the rooms, I noticed the same toys were still scattered in their circle. But this time, something was different. In the center of the circle lay an old, tattered teddy bear that hadn't been there before. I picked it up, brushing off the dust. It felt heavy, like it carried the weight of some forgotten sorrow. Then I noticed something stitched on its foot. A name. Emily. My heart dropped. Was that the girl's name? How could this be possible? The tapping started again, louder this time, resonating from the end of the hallway. My instinct screamed at me to run, yet I pressed on. I had to follow the sound that felt like a heartbeat, pulling me closer. I reached the last room on the right, its door slightly ajar. I pushed the door open with a shaky hand. The room was dark, the only light coming from my flashlight. The sight that met my eyes was horrifying. The walls were covered in crayon drawings, scribbles and shapes that looked like distorted faces and shadowy figures. It felt alive, vibrating with a sinister energy. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw her again. Emily stood in the far corner, her eyes wide and pleading. "Help me," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I froze. This was real. She was real. I felt paralyzed, trapped in a moment where fear and fascination collided. What did she need help with? I needed answers. Suddenly, the fluorescence flickered violently, plunging the room into darkness. Panic surged. I couldn't see anything but the outline of Emily's figure, now moving closer, her expression shifting from fear to despair. Heart pounding, I reached for the door behind me, but it slammed shut, trapping me in the pitch black. The tapping grew frantic, a chaotic rhythm pounding in my ears. Then everything went quiet. I could hear my own breathing. I fumbled for my flashlight, praying it would still work. As the beam flickered back to life, I pointed it at Emily, but she was gone. The room was empty. I stumbled backward, my mind racing. What just happened? I had to find a way out. That stuffed bear felt heavy in my grip, a cold reminder of the very real danger I was in. Then I felt it, a chill creeping over me, a whisper against the back of my neck. I wasn't alone. I turned slowly, my heart hammering. That's when I saw it. The figure emerged from the shadows, a silhouette shifting just beyond the reach of my flashlight. It was more than just a shape. It seemed to breathe, pooling darkness around itself. I blinked hard, willing my eyes to adjust, but it didn't change. My pulse raced. Was this a part of my imagination, or was it real? "Who's there?" I called out, my voice trembling. It came out more like a whisper. My grip tightened around the teddy bear. It was my only anchor in this suffocating darkness. The figure shifted again, taking a step forward. My heart leaped into my throat. I should have run. I should have turned and fled. But my feet felt glued to the floor. I was caught between fear and an inexplicable urge to move closer, to confront whatever, or whoever, was there. "Emily?" I managed to voice her name, hoping fervently she would answer, or at least that would provide some semblance of understanding. But nothing came back, only the weight of silence that pressed heavily around me. The flashlight flickered again, and I fought to keep it steady. Just when I thought I'd lose the beam completely, it shone brightly for a brief moment, illuminating the room. The figure was gone, but something else caught my eye, a flicker in the corner. A small movement that felt oddly familiar. I stepped forward, instinctively drawn to the area where I'd last seen Emily. A small pile of crumpled papers lay on the floor, half hidden beneath a bed. I crouched down, my curiosity overpowering my fear. The first sheet I picked up was a drawing, one of Emily's scribbles. It looked more chaotic than I remembered, twisted faces, dark shapes intermingling. It made my stomach churn. Then I noticed a name at the bottom. Anna. My blood ran cold. Another name? Why? Who was Anna? I rifled through the papers hastily. Each was a variation of Emily's artwork, but combined with names I hadn't seen before. Derek, Sarah, Joshua. With every name, an unsettling feeling bloomed in my chest. This was more than just drawings. It held stories, hidden truths I had yet to uncover. Suddenly, a soft, muffled sound echoed behind me, like a distant child's laugh. I jerked around, hair standing on end. My stomach twisted in knots. I was not here alone. This place was alive with something dark and desperate. I turned to the door, desperate for an escape, but it wouldn't budge. Panic surged as I pushed against it with my shoulder. It remained stubbornly closed, like a heavy truth refusing to be revealed. The walls seemed to pulse around me, the drawings now vibrating with energy. Each stroke felt accusatory, like they were coming to life, pleading for someone to understand. My breathing quickened. I was trapped in a nightmare. That's when I felt a small hand grasp my ankle tightly. I gasped and looked down. There she was, the shadow of a girl peering up at me with wide, pleading eyes. It was Emily, but she looked different. Opaque, flickering in and out of focus. My body froze, paralyzed by fear and a desperate want to understand. "Help me find her," she whispered urgently, her gaze shifting back toward the pile of drawings. I searched her face, trying to glean some understanding. But something else was pulling me, an invisible force drawing me closer to the pile of paper. I hesitated. What did she mean by her? Before I could ask, the lights overhead crackled and went out again. The darkness swarmed in and a shiver coiled around me. I wasn't sure who or what would answer next, but I knew one thing. I was running out of time. I didn't know what to do next. My breath came in quick, shallow gasps. I felt Emily's tiny hand tighten around my ankle, grounding me, but I was still adrift in confusion. The pile of drawings loomed ominously in the dim light, its shadows shifting like living things. "Emily, what are you talking about?" I whispered, though even I could barely hear my own voice over the pounding of my heart. She blinked at me, her expression twisted with urgency, a look that sent a chill down my spine. It was like she was struggling against something invisible clutching at her, pulling her back. "Anna is lost," she pleaded. "You have to help me find her." "Where?" I asked, desperately searching for answers. "Where is she?" Before she could answer, the weight of the darkness pressed in closer, making it hard to think. I dropped the drawings I had been holding, not wanting to lose grasp of Emily. She wavered in front of me, just a flicker of light in a sea of black. Another muffled giggle echoed from the shadows, sending an icy shock up my spine. I whipped around. The sound was closer now, almost right behind me. I could sense movement, but the beam of my flashlight was weak, flickering like a heartbeat. "Stay close to me," I whispered, instinctively pulling Emily towards me. She evaporated for a moment, then stuttered back into view, her small form pulsating in and out, before locking back on me. The walls around us grew darker, shadows stretching like hands reaching for us. I could feel a sense of dread building, a crushing weight that threatened to pull me under. I was drowning in fear, and the small voice beside me was my only lifeline. "Help me." With a surge of determination, I grabbed hold of the nearest piece of paper littering the floor, one that shimmered slightly as if it were alive. It was a drawing, much clearer than the others, depicting a little girl holding a teddy bear, her eyes big and sad. The name Anna followed beneath it. "What is this?" I asked, turning it towards Emily, but she didn't respond. She was staring at something behind me, eyes wide with terror. I turned slowly. The air shifted. The darkness felt thicker. A figure emerged dimly from the shadows, not quite solid but unmistakable. I couldn't make out features, but I could sense it looming there, watching us. "Run!" I shouted. An instinct took over. I sprinted for the door, yanking with all my strength. Emily was almost swept away in the rush, and I glanced back at her, afraid of leaving her behind. The door finally gave way, throwing me into the corridor just outside. I stumbled forward, gasping for breath. As I turned back to grab Emily, she vanished into the murky shadows of the room. "Emily!" I screamed, but the silence that followed was deafening. The corridor stretched before me, dimly lit and foreboding. I couldn't go back, but I couldn't just leave her there. Before I could think through my next move, the distant sound of laughter echoed again, clearer and closer, drawing me deeper into the hospital's twisted heart. With every step, I could feel something waiting for me. Something that had been lurking in the corners, waiting for the moment to reveal itself. I pressed on, driven by a mixture of dread and determination, knowing I had to uncover the truth, if only I could survive long enough to do so. The laughter faded, but the chilling sensation remained. I moved cautiously down the corridor, the old tiles beneath my feet creaking with every step. The faint light flickered overhead, casting long shadows that danced like specters at the edges of my vision. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was behind me, lurking just out of sight. As I pressed forward, I stumbled upon a door ajar. It was a small examination room, the kind full of sharp tools and forgotten memories. Heart racing, I edged closer to peek inside. The room was empty, except for a large mirror hanging on the wall. My reflection was pale, drawn, and frantic, but something in the corner of the glass caught my attention. I leaned closer, squinting through the dim light. At first, I saw nothing unusual, just an empty room behind me. But then I froze. In the reflection, a shadow flitted across the doorway behind me, too quick to catch with my eyes. My stomach twisted. I whirled around, but the corridor was empty. Just silence, stretching out before me. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm inside. It was probably just my imagination playing tricks on me. Yet, deep down, I knew better. There was something in this hospital. Something wrong. I turned back to the mirror and noticed something else. A smudge on the glass, hand-shaped and small, like a child's. My pulse quickened as I raised my finger to touch the cold surface. As soon as I did, I felt a slight tremor beneath the floor. a vibration that rattled through my bones. "Please," a voice whispered. I spun around again, but there was still no one there. I was totally alone. "Emily?" I called out, my voice trembling. "Where are you?" The only answer was the relentless ticking of a clock somewhere down the hall. I had to keep moving, but uncertainty hung around me like a heavy fog. I stepped back from the mirror, eyes darting around. Another muffled giggle echoed, this one louder and more manic, drawing me toward a door at the far end of the corridor. Tentatively, I approached. My heart pounded as I reached for the cold doorknob. I could feel an energy thrumming, an anxiety that prickled under my skin. I turned the knob, and the door creaked open, revealing a dim room lit by an eerie glow. Inside, the walls were plastered with more drawings, but these were different. They were twisted, chaotic depictions of creatures with hollow eyes and jagged smiles. And then, in the middle of the room, I saw it. A teddy bear, worn and dusty, sitting atop a small table. "Anna must be here," I mumbled to myself, stepping in closer. My heartbeat synced with the low thrum that filled the room. I just need to find her. Then I noticed something strange. The bear had a name tag pinned to it, threaded through with an old string. I hesitated, but my curiosity pushed me onward. I reached out to touch it, and as soon as my fingers brushed against the fur, the room seemed to draw a breath. Suddenly the door slammed shut behind me. I spun around, panic flooding my chest. The laughter grew louder, echoing through the small space. But it wasn't just laughter. It was a chorus of voices, overlapping, pleading, and mocking all at once. I was trapped. In that moment, the ticking clock stopped, and the shadows deepened around me, hungry and eager. Before I could act, a single voice broke through the din, sharp and commanding. "You shouldn't have come here." My heart dropped. The words lingered in the air, chilling and cold. I had to escape. But how? I turned back to the mirror, desperate for any sign of hope. My reflection stared back at me, wide-eyed and panicked. I wanted to scream, but the laughter tightened around me like a noose. I had to stay calm. I had to think. I darted toward the door, but it wouldn't budge. It felt as if something heavy was pressing against the other side, holding it shut. My mind raced. The laughter was transforming into a chorus of cries, voices overlapping in a turmoil of anguish. I pressed my ear against the door, straining to hear. It was no longer just mockery. There was fear intermingled with the sounds, desperation drenching each note. "Let me out!" I shouted, pounding my fist against the wood. "Please!" But the laughter morphed into something darker, something that sent chills racing down my spine. Suddenly the lights flickered, illuminating parts of the room I hadn't noticed before. In the corner, a dark figure hovered, its shape indistinct but undeniably present. My breath caught in my throat. I blinked, and it was gone. Just shadows swaying where it once stood. "Anna," I whispered, a flicker of hope igniting inside me. "Is that you?" Silence answered, heavy and suffocating. I felt an overwhelming urge to break away from the door, to confront whatever was weaving in the shadows. I turned back to the teddy bear, my heart pounding hard against my chest. Maybe it held the key. I stepped closer, desperately trying to ignore the laughter that was now erupting into shrieks. Beneath the bear's dirty surface, I could see the name tag shining with a spectral glow. It read, "Anna." I reached for it, my fingers trembling as I grabbed the tag. As soon as I did, the lights flickered again, and the room plunged into darkness. The laughter ceased abruptly, replaced by a soft, sorrowful sigh that wrapped around me like a cold blanket. I felt a chilling breeze brush past me. I was no longer alone. "Anna?" I called out into the void, my voice barely a whisper. Then I felt it, a tug on my arm, pulling me back, urging me to turn. I whirled around, heart racing. In front of me, the dark figure began to materialize, taking on a familiar shape. I drew in a sharp breath as the form sharpened into a little girl with hollow eyes and a fragile smile that didn't reach them. "Play with me," she said, her words echoing in a soft, sing-song voice that chilled me further. Panic surged through me. This was not how I imagined finding Anna. I turned back to the door, but it remained shut fast. I could feel her presence closing in, a weight heavy against my chest. "Anna, we need to leave. This isn't safe," I pleaded, but my voice felt small against the shadows that leered and mocked. The girl's laughter rang out, a haunting melody that made my skin prickle. I could sense the room tightening around me, as though it was alive, responding to the presence. As I stumbled back, I reached for the mirror, hoping for an escape. That's when I saw it. Something lurking beneath the surface of the glass. A face, twisted and grotesque, with a set of sharp teeth glimmering in the low light. Immediately, I knew. I had to break free or I'd end up like them. My heart raced as I searched for an escape, the shadows circling closer, hungry for company. There was no time to hesitate. I had to act before they dragged me into the darkness. The room trembled around me as I fought against a wave of despair. My mind was spinning as I searched for a way out. The shadows pressed in closer, and I could feel the urgency building. I needed to do something, anything, before I became trapped like the whispers that filled the air. I remembered the teddy bear in my hand. Its tag glowed faintly, pulsing with some unreal energy. Maybe it was a connection to Anna, a way to break the cycle. I tightened my grip on it and shouted, "Take me to Anna!" In an instant, the temperature dropped. My breath fogged in front of me. The air felt saturated with dread. I looked up to see the figure of the girl lingering behind me, her smile melting into a frown, a flicker of disappointment crossing her face. "You want to play?" she said, her voice no longer sweet. It became sharp and demanding. "You have to follow the rules." "What rules?" I stammered, panic making my voice crack. "Just let me leave." The girl's laughter twisted, turning into something that felt violent and harsh. The shadows shifted with her, swirling ominously as if they had a mind of their own. My heart raced faster. I needed to act, but all I could think about was the dark face in the mirror. Suddenly, the laughter erupted into a cacophony of shrieks, and beneath it, I heard a word that froze me in place. "Help!" I spun around, my eyes searching desperately for the source. The girl was gone. The room felt hollow now, like I was the only one left in the universe. "Help?" I whispered, unsure whom I was speaking to. Then, a glimmer caught my eye from the nearby corner. It was a small object, metallic, partially hidden beneath some debris. Being drawn to it, I stumbled over shards of glass and crumpled paper until I could grasp it. My hands trembled as I pulled it from the dust. A key, rusted and ancient-looking, and my pulse quickened. "Where does this go?" I asked aloud, my voice mingling with the whispers. But it felt like the shadows were listening. I sensed their anticipation. As I rose, I caught sight of the mirror again. The grotesque face was pressing against the other side, its vicious grin even more pronounced. "Let me in," it rasped, its voice like fingernails on a chalkboard. "Let me play." "No!" I shouted, the key feeling heavy in my palm. I glanced at the door once more, hoping for a miracle. The shadows dropped their playfulness and surged toward me, anger radiating from their depths. I had to make a choice. I had to decide where this key belonged. Just then, from the corner of my eye, something flickered by the doorframe, a shadowy silhouette that resembled Anna. It was gone in a flash, yet the sight ignited a dying spark of hope in my chest. "Anna!" I called out. But the walls began to tremble again. The walls were closing in, and the laughter returned, echoed by the tortured cries I could no longer ignore. I turned my attention back to the key. "Where do you belong?" I asked, desperation rising. But before I could figure it out, a deafening crash jolted the room. Everything went dark again, this time deeper and more suffocating than before. Something had changed. Someone was no longer in the shadows. I had a feeling I was about to learn more than I bargained for. The silence that followed felt unnaturally heavy, pressing in on all sides. I stood there, clutching the key tightly, heart racing as I blinked against the darkness. I strained my ears, trying to catch any sound, any sign that I wasn't alone. But all I could hear was my own breath echoing, quick and frantic. And then it happened. A whisper, soft at first, barely a murmur, but unmistakable. "Help me." My skin prickled. I turned towards the sound, but the pitch-black void offered no clues. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. The air felt charged, as if something was waiting just beyond my reach. Anna? My throat felt tight as I spoke her name. The sound of it felt wrong in the emptiness. A pang of loss washed over me, pulling me into the depths of despair. I shook my head. No, I can't think like that. I have to find her. I stumbled forward, trying to make sense of the dark. My fingers slid along the cold, rough wall. The key dangled from my hand, teasing me with its promise of a way out, or perhaps a way deeper in. Then, I felt something shift behind me. The shadows thickened, swirling like a dark mist. I turned quickly, key raised defensively. But it was just a flicker, a brief moment that felt like a warning. "Stop!" I yelled, voice rising. The shadows recoiled as if hurt by my command. That's when I saw it. A faint light illuminating a part of the wall. It was an outline of a door, almost hidden among the shifting darkness. My heart raced. Could this be what the key was for? I moved toward it, hope replacing fear with every step. As I approached, the light seemed to pulse, beckoning me closer. But just as I reached for the handle, the whispers swelled into a crescendo. "Help us," they cried, overlapping and intensifying. They were no longer just hollow sounds. They were filled with anguish, each plea pulling at my conscience. An icy dread gripped me. I hesitated, glancing back at the shadows that now seemed writhing with fury, voices chasing after me. "I can't help you," I shouted, desperation spilling over. "I have to find Anna." I swung back to the door. My hand trembled, and I took a deep breath before gripping the handle. It felt smooth and warm, oddly comforting amidst the chaos. With a quick turn, I pulled it open. The door creaked as it revealed a dimly lit room beyond. It was filled with old medical equipment, faded and dusty. In the center stood a bed draped with a thin sheet. A figure lay there, motionless. My heart dropped as I stepped inside. "Anna," I whispered, dread pooling in my stomach. I rushed forward, the key forgotten at my side. But as I got closer, the room grew colder. A shudder ran through me, gripping my very bones as I reached out to touch her shoulder. And just before I made contact, I felt a sharp pull from behind, dragging me back into darkness. The last thing I heard was the echo of countless voices crying out, "Now you must play!" Everything went black again, and I could feel myself slipping, the world around me spinning out of control. What had I just walked into? The fear surged back, sharper than before. I had to escape, and I had to find Anna. But was she even here? I blinked into the darkness, struggling to make sense of what just happened. A cold sweat lingered on my skin, the temperature in the room dropping as I twisted around, desperate to find something, anything, that offered familiarity. I forced myself to breathe. "Anna?" The name slipped out again, a fragile thread tying me to sanity. But there was no reply, only the heavy silence of the unknown. I felt the walls closing in, the air thickening around me. I needed to move. I stumbled backward, the frayed carpet under my feet almost sending me sprawling. A small window on the far side glowed faintly, casting a weak light across the room. I crept toward it, fists clenched, determined to find an escape. But as I approached, the whispers returned, irritating and insistent. "Help us!" Each plea was like a dagger, cutting through my already frayed nerves. "I can't help anyone!" I shot back, my voice breaking. It felt futile. I was alone. When I reached the window, dread clutched my heart. Outside, a thick fog blanketed the ground. Shapes lurked just out of sight, blackened figures blending with the mist. I could feel their eyes on me, curious and hungry. I pulled away, heart pounding, and turned back to the room. That's when I noticed the door had closed. My stomach dropped. I hadn't heard it shut. Was it locked? I felt a flicker of panic, but forced myself to stay calm. I had to think clearly. A quick scan of the room turned up nothing useful. I needed to find a way to open that door, but the whispers grew louder, swirling around me, filling my head with confusion. "Let us out," they urged, their voices melding into one. "Who are you?" I shouted, panic slipping into my words. The lights flickered, casting strange shadows that danced like specters. My heart raced as I moved back toward the bed. I could still see the outline of the figure beneath the sheet. I had shut my eyes against it, but now I approached with hesitant steps. What if it was Anna? I hadn't seen her in so long. I reached out and tugged the sheet away. The figure lay still, absolutely still. It was not Anna. The face was unfamiliar, sunken and pale, with eyes that looked as if they had not closed in years. The expression was an eerie mix of pain and sorrow. I backed away, horrified. What happened here? I breathed. Suddenly, a loud thud echoed from behind the door. I jumped, heart racing all over again. Something was trying to break in. I rushed over, feeling the door rattle beneath my palm. "Please, let me out," I yelled. "Play with us." The whispers twisted, churning into a cacophony of laughter that echoed eerily through the space. My resolve cracked. The voices had shifted from desperation to something sinister. I lunged for the window again, but it was too high, too far. Just as I turned back toward the door, it swung open with a creak. A figure stood silhouetted in the doorway. I squinted through the dim light, my heart judging whether to race or freeze. "You shouldn't have come here," the figure rasped, a smile creeping across its lips. The whispers climaxed into a shriek. I knew then I had unwittingly stepped into something darker than I ever imagined. With trembling legs, I faced whatever horror was on the other side, stuck between fight or flight. The door was open, but freedom felt so far away. I stood frozen, my thoughts spinning as the figure gradually stepped into the room, the shadows wrapping around them like a cloak. The weight of their presence pressed in on me, suffocating in its intensity. My heart hammered against my ribs, and for a fleeting moment, I doubted my ability to breathe. Who are you?" I managed, my voice shaky. I never expected an answer, yet hope flickered enough to keep me standing. The figure drew closer, its face obscured by darkness. Just as I began to see a hint of features, the shadows receded momentarily, revealing a young girl, her face twisted in a blend of sorrow and rage. Memories washed over me, the chaotic images of Emily surfacing, but everything felt disturbingly wrong. "Did you really think you could leave?" she hissed, the sweetness of a child's voice tainted by an underlying malice. The whispers swelled in response, a tumultuous wave that crashed against my eardrums, drowning out logic. "You wanted to help. Now you must join us." A prickling sensation darted down my spine. "No!" I shouted, the defiance deep within me igniting. I took a small step back, instinct urging me to find the door and run. But something held me rooted. "I came to find Anna." "Anna!" Her laugh echoed off the walls, cruel and mocking. "She's part of this now, just like you." I dug deep, searching for a remnant of strength, of courage. "I'm not afraid of you," I shouted, spitting words like fire. Breathing in, I steeled myself. I noticed a door behind her, ajar, a narrow strip of light beckoning from within. Maybe it led to a way out, maybe to Anna, but I only had a moment before I was smothered again in the haunting laughter blooming in the air. The girl raised her hand, and for an instant, the shadows around her flickered and danced. "You have a choice," she said, her tone shifting to a softer, insidious murmur. "Play or perish." Those words hung in the air, oppressive and damning. I glanced between her and the sliver of light behind her. "I'm not playing your games!" I shouted, forcing those words through clenched teeth. With a sudden burst, I charged to the side, barreling past her and lunging for the door. The light grew brighter as I slipped through the crack, feeling cold hands reach for me, trying to pull me back. I stumbled into the light, the barrier of shadows breaking apart as I pushed through. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then the darkness roared, the girl's voice shrieking in my ears as I broke into the next room. It was a hallway I recognized from my first night working there, the pediatric wing. I sprinted, my breath ragged, my heart pounding like a war drum. As I raced down the hall, the laughter surged again, more frantic now. The faces from the drawings danced around the walls, their expressions shifting between happiness and horror. I didn't stop. I charged through the double doors of the exit, pushing out into the night air, the chill biting at my skin. As I stumbled outside, gasping for fresh air, the laughter was replaced with an eerie calm. The hospital loomed behind me, still and silent. I stood there, heart racing, unsure whether to break into sobs or laugh at my escape. But as I looked back, a figure appeared in the doorway. A little girl in a pale gown, her hair floating like she was underwater. "You forgot something," she called, her voice echoing hollowly in the night. My breath caught in my throat, a paralyzing chill gripping my spine. I turned, panic rising again, and fled to my car. The engine sputtered to life, but before I could hit the gas, I glanced back one last time. The girl was gone, but the feeling of eyes watching me remained, the shadows still lingering on the edges of the hospital. I sped away, the road ahead illuminated by the pale moonlight. Questions filled my mind, the weight of what I had just experienced heavy on my chest. Was Emily free? Was Anna lost forever? What lay beyond the darkness of that building? I couldn't shake the feeling that something would always tether me to that place, no matter how far I ran. Weeks passed, and I tried to resume my life, but the tapping returned, echoing within my memory. Sometimes I thought I saw a flash of pale fabric in the corner of my eyes. I never returned to that neighborhood, but the laughter haunted me like a distant whisper, a reminder that I had escaped but never truly left. They were still waiting, just out of sight, perhaps for the next soul brave enough to satisfy their game. I moved to a different city after that. Sometimes I wonder if Emily is still in that hospital, if Anna ever made it out. But mostly, I try not to think about it.